In the beginning, I didn't want him to dump me. And I wanted to be really fun and vivacious and cool and easygoing.
I very much see myself as a choreographer. Movement's the real starting point for what I do. But I suppose in some ways it's almost more akin to visual arts in terms of what I'm interested in doing with that movement.
How do you see the evolution of dance itself?
I think originally it was very much a community activity and also a sacred activity. So dance was often something that a particular member of a tribe or members of a tribe did as like almost like a communication,
like a storytelling,
spiritual playing.
Right.
And you notice with children that you put on any music for a child, any child, and they'll move, they'll dance. It's a very natural instinct, and somehow we lose that as we get older.
Im tiefen Tal dein Nachtgebet und auch dein Sterngemahl. Im tiefen Erdbeertal im schwarzen Haar, da schlief ich manchen Sonntag und schlief.
I was drawn to dance, from an early age, and I had ballet lessons, like a lot of little girls, I think.
Here in Melbourne?
No, in Adelaide. I'm originally from Adelaide.
Right.
After that, I moved to Sydney, and I began working with a choreographer there called Russell Dumas.
0, 9, 6, 2, 2, 5, 1.
Some artists are just directed from a very early age and they know exactly what they want to do.
Right.
But for me, that point didn't really come, I suppose, until about my mid-20s, when I had been dancing for quite a while, and this particular choreographer took me to New York, and I think that was a turning point for me in a way, that I realised that I did have something that I wanted to say, and dance actually really did interest me because it introduced me to this other level of thinking about dance as a more, not so much as a kind of physical expression, but as a way of expressing ideas. After a few years I actually moved to New York, and that's where I began choreographing, and I felt very comfortable in that context.
Yeah, but how did you fall into choreographing?
My nature, I guess, that I wanted to be a creative artist rather than
just a dancer.
Yeah,
right.
Well, not just a dancer. Dance is hugely creative as well, but it's taking material that you're given and making it into something, which I think the best dancers do. They really, you give them some choreographic material and they just transcend it and make it into more than what you initially gave them.
Is it like composing?
Well, everyone works with it in a very different way. I don't work with narrative.
Oh, okay.
I find that a very limited tool when it comes to dance, because I think dance is really quite an abstract form. I tend to work more with mood and with trying to build a sort of psychological or emotional tension or state.
She says to me, I don't feel that I'm attractive to you. I don't feel that I'm wanted by you. And I don't understand why she feels this way, because I'm giving all that I can, and I can't tap into any unknown reservoir of giving.
That particular piece, I worked with a visual artist called David Rosetsky, and his work influenced that quite a bit, aesthetically and content-wise,
Right.
because he works with those kind of internal monologues of the people that are in his art.
But then how did you flesh that out into dance? And why did you make her do those movements? Was that,
Well, I suppose that's an example of how you take an idea and transform it into movement, because the movements that I gave her were all in a very confined, it was almost like she was doing that choreography inside a cube, so all the movements were up against this very restricted area, because I wanted to give a sense of her constraint within this relationship.
Mind the gap, please.
the other one I resonated with was the one you had the two dancers moving around near each other.
Oh yes,
Very
yeah.
closely.
I mean, that piece is really just about two people and how they relate to each other and the sort of levels of intimacy and, I suppose, difficulties or alienation they might have over their lives, or it's quite a visual piece because it has the two white squares which sort of represent these very small areas of containment for the dancers. The way that I go about making a piece is I'll bring an idea into the studio, and it will often be an idea that I've thought about, quite extensively. I've imagined what I might do with it in relation to movement or with the other design elements. But once I go into the studio, it always changes quite a lot, because once I start working with dancers, they do have a huge contribution to the work. So it is a very much back and forth. There's one piece called Melt, which is and the idea I had for that, it's a duet, was that was really very, very simple. It was a work that was going to go from freezing to boiling, and it was about a sort of physical interpretation of emotions in relation to temperature. So there was warm, there was sort of lukewarm, there was tepid, there was hot, there was steam. So I sort of had this spectrum, and I wanted to build a work that went from very static and still and crystalline to very sort of wild and hot and physical. Other works that I've done, often it will just be like I'll have just a moment of a visual image that'll be very, very strong and evocative, and create a sort of mood and I suppose with the one with the white square, that I had that picture of just the white square and the black space, and the dancers framed by the white square, and that square highlighted particular parts of their body, so you could see some parts but others you couldn't. So almost like a filmic sort of device.
But are you thinking almost like new media these days when you choreograph?
Well, I can think in terms of new media, and that's been a recent thing for me only in the last few years that I've worked with projections. But usually the motivation for me is initially visual, and then I find a way to sort of draw that out physically through motion and through movement. I think with ballroom and a lot of other dance forms, there is also the added factor of grace and expression, but I don't think it's I don't think it's pushing any boundaries in terms of artistic ideas or trying to communicate anything to an audience, in terms of a concept, and that's the difference. initially what I've tried to do is invent a unique language for the body that doesn't refer to other forms of dance. So it's something that isn't sort of codified and it's not referential. But often in my works I will have just little moments of recognisable movement, and sometimes it's almost more like an everyday movement, like it might be a shrug or just some more, I suppose, more gestural, which sort of allows the audience to then relocate and and have this moment of recognition
or relation.
Yeah, or physical, that they can really connect and understand what that moment is, and then I have this theory that then allows them to feel more comfortable then with the other movement, which is perhaps more, for me, more an expression of a physical or mental state.
Just have to get rid of some newspaper and then we can get on with it. You can think of this part as slowly clearing space and communication debris, if you like.
Every person's body or every dancer's body has its own inbuilt history, and what those dancers have done since they were 5 years old in dance, and also just in their lives. They might have been, very athletic, or they might not have been. They might. That tends to come out in the work just because the dancers will take it in that direction. So if you do have a dancer that's done a lot of jazz or done a lot of tap or ballroom or Tai Chi or any of those physical trainings, that there will be vestiges of that coming out in the work, and I think that's one of the quite fascinating things about work, because if you work with paint or clay, that clay has no past, whereas the people that you work with have this whole life.
They've got baggage.
They've got good baggage though, that you can draw on and that you can use to shape your ideas.
How do you come up with your own language to a dance?
I used to do a lot of it in front of the mirror, and it was very much about shape and about how it looked. It was much more visual connection with the movement. But as I've moved on and I suppose become a bit more trusting of my ability to create movement, I don't use a mirror. It's a more internal. It's trying to access something more internal. It's very hard to explain, actually. It's the one aspect of it that I think is a little bit mysterious. Yeah, it's a kind of accessing, I don't know if you'd call it emotion or a mood or almost like a texture. It's almost just this vaguest feeling that you allow to kind of then come out and influence the movement. And that's quite difficult because you've been trained and your body's been trained, a lot of times what comes out is very predictable, and so it's a question of subverting those shapes and those lines and those textures to try to find something unfamiliar. And I always know when I've found it, and the dancers always know too. You can tell that there's this other thing that they haven't done before and I haven't done before or seen before.
The other thing that really fascinates me about what you're doing is that you're also subverting body language.
That most of the dancers I work with now understand that, and we have in some ways a common goal, that we are looking for the unfamiliar and the not necessarily the beautiful or the graceful, or beautiful in a different way. We're looking for a sort of emotional language.
What is art?
Art, as we, as a lot of visual artists have sort of explored in the past, can be anything. But it's really how you contextualise and frame it that says whether it's art or not. Funny things that happen in performances where, you know, someone will get the giggles during a performance and they'll, you know, have to run off stage because they're laughing.
Oh, you mean the performers?
Yeah.
You serious?
Or someone will fart or something and all the others will start cracking up and, you know, they're supposed to be...
Have you had that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Seriously?
Oh, yeah. Terrible things happen. Yeah.
I've definitely always seen myself as an artist. I grew up in a place called Bankstown in the western suburbs of Sydney, and I remember being on a train when I was about, I don't know, probably early teenage, and telling a friend that, you know, I'd decided I was going to be an artist. I went from school to university, studied fine arts and history, and then went to the ABC for a few years, then left the ABC and finally went to art school, and that's when things started to come together because I'd already worked in film, in editing. I'd always been interested in drawing and painting, and then at art school when video came to, the art schools had bought the equipment, no one was really teaching it. But for me, it was a medium that could bring these various strands of my interests together. And that's really when I started to think in terms of contemporary art, I was a long time in kind of getting there. And my other kind of ambition was to do something in relationship to filmmaking. But once I got into the ABC, I realised that it would be, you know, a very, very long time before I could actually make any kind of creative decision. Longevity ruled rather than talent, I believe. But it was a really important training ground for the film industry. I mean, before the days of the, particularly of the film school and so on. It was a real apprenticeship. It was no theory, you know, you're just thrown in, the door opens, there's the moviola, there's the editor, you're the assistant, you're just told what to do. And
what's a moviola? We're talking now 35mm film, 16mm film, or we're talking video?
We're talking 16mm film. I was working on the 7 o'clock news bulletin for a while as an assistant and then as a sound editor, and you know the sort of frantic production to get the stories ready for the bulletin, and you know while the bulletin had gone to air you'd still be running down the halls to the dubbing theatre to add sound on. You'd take 2 rolls, one of film, one of audio, you'd run to the telecity and just throw it at them, they'd throw it on the machine and then it'd be on air. Yes.
Why is this film versus video thing happen?
I guess it had something to do with how bad the quality of video was, you know, in its early days. That film purists couldn't accept that. But of course artists did, because it gave them freedom that film didn't. You know, that was the thing. With film you had to have a storyboard, you had to have a crew usually, and you had to verbalise what you were doing. Of course everyone who's on the set had to understand what was going on. With video you could just take a porta pack a lot easier these days, because in those days it was a huge thing that, you know, practically broke your back to carry around. But you could work by yourself. The holy grail in those days was what you called A-B rolls, which was to be able to sync two separate video sources and combine them on the single screen. That was like, for me, that was sort of like, if I could just do that.
Was it still the Bill Wildes and people like that that were the heavy-duty video artists?
Yes, yeah. I mean, and Bill is kind of like someone who survived out of that world. I mean, he was in Tokyo when I first went there in the early 80s. He was already well known. I mean, Tokyo at that time was kind of a sort of like Rome in the Renaissance for video artists. It was partly because the equipment came from there. I mean, okay. Sony. People went there, like Michael Goldberg from Canada, who had a lot to do with the video in INN. He, in the very early times, in the early 70s, had just simply gone on the notion that since the equipment was coming there must be video artists there, or artists using video. But he got there and discovered that he was introducing the concept to Japan. So he met Professor Katsuhiro Yamaguchi and Fujiko Nakaya, the famous artist who's known as a folk sculptor.
Yes.
She then started a gallery in Harajuku in Tokyo called Video Gallery Scan, and that became the kind of key point that everyone in the world passed through this little room.
Yes.
Bill Viola, everyone in the video art world went and gave a talk, a presentation.
Yes.
All the Japanese artists came, and it was a real kind of network thing that grew out of that. Jump between 1982 and 1999, and in that same room, which was such an important kind of hub for the video art world, someone mentioned that they'd just been to a wedding of two video artists. People in the entourage were video artists, and they were all sitting around commiserating that this is probably the last occasion where there would be a gathering of video artists in Japan, and it was more or less true. You've seen over the last decade and a half a lot of artists moving into video, to making things with video for the first time, and I've kind of deliberately gone the other direction of making still images for the first time in my life. If you want to see the rubbish and detritus of bad taste art in the 19th century in France,
yes,
and elsewhere, you can really go to the Musée d'Orsay and contemplate. You know, there's always been a lot of bad art, I guess. But I think we're kind of facing a phenomenon, well, I feel a sort of pressure, you know, with the internet and with all these new readily available softwares, with the ubiquity of very sophisticated imagery on television.
Yes.
And it's really difficult now to make a mark. It's almost as though with the internet, everyone is an artist and no one is an artist. I was given a position for 12 months in a department store in Tokyo in 1986, and they had what at that time would have been the largest outdoor colour screen in the world. And instead of using that screen for advertising, they employed a team of artists and musicians to make content for that screen. When I was working there, the editing room had a glass wall, and you were kind of open to the public, and you were positioned right next to the screen, so you could see if people were looking up and reacting to the work. I don't necessarily make work for people. I mainly make it for myself.
Clear.
But you know, you kind of, there does need to be some kind of.
What is your process?
I've never worked with scripts, and if I did work with a script, there almost wouldn't be any compulsion to make the piece, you know, because you would know what it would be like before it was finished. So I like to be surprised by what comes out. I accumulate images into a sort of a data bank, and at a certain point they start to sort of interact with each other, and I like to be kind of surprised by those interactions. I used to think that art was about discovering where boundaries lie, you know, finding those boundaries and then working out how to work within them. But with the whole shift to full-blown computing, that becomes very, very difficult to hang on to that as a definition of art.
What is your definition of art?
Well, now I don't have one. This project is a commission from an organisation in Pisa in Italy,
right,
called Onda Video, and they're a small video organisation that over the years has commissioned a number of artists to make works in or about Pisa that aren't about the Leaning Tower.
So what did they want you to do?
It's a 14th century fresco called The Triumph of Death, Trionfo della Morte, and it has the most almost lurid hell scene that over the years has been sort of repainted and repainted and repainted because people always have thrown stones at the Lucifer figure, who's about 3 or 4 times life size.
Right.
And this particular hell scene has been very influential over the years from that time onward on how hell is visualised outside of but intersecting with the Dante tradition.
See, this is also quite ironic in some respects for someone like yourself to come from the new world to be commissioned to do something in the old world. Are they wanting something from the new world? Is that the idea of having someone new there?
Yeah.
But you as an artist, you must be influenced dreadfully by that area. Is it? Does it resonate with you in a way that makes your works have more relationship with the old world because of the fact that you're there, or do you don't? Or to you, it's just a blank canvas?
Well, you know, that's been a sort of something that I've explored almost by accident over the years, because a lot of my video work was to do with portraits, kind of compressed portraits of different cultures, which I made by going to those places, living there for a while and trying to kind of make a work about that thing, but not in a documentary way in any sense. Just sort of to capture the spirit of a place or comment something about it. For example, I made a tape in 1988-89 called Neo Geo and American Purchase while I was doing a artist in residence at PS1 in New York, and that involved looking at a lot of American popular imagery. And what I realised, having just finished an Australian work, which was my reaction to the Australian bicentennial, was that with the Australian images I was completely at home. If someone looked at that and they were Australian, they would know what it meant. Whereas even though we are so much awash with American popular culture, I realised at that time that I didn't actually know this culture in depth. For me, the Australian perspective is always very much to be the outsider, to cast a laconic eye on things as well.
Yes.
And a lot of my work is, on one level at least, quite humorous. So, you know, again with this health thing, even though it's early but virulent piece of church propaganda,
Yes.
there are comical ways to enter into it in terms of the history of how this image has ended up where it is today, and the history of people throwing things at it, you know, the repainting, the bombing of it, and so on.
Art is an intellectual concept, and yet sport, if we look at it at the highest level, it also is an intellectual concept. Is sport an art?
I would say so. I think these limitations we put into certain categories do not apply. They're just grown with our language, being able to differentiate the fields. But the process of a race, or of running a company, or of creating an important piece of art is exactly the same.
In the human spirit, we can accept sport as a barometer of excellence, but we really find it difficult to do the same with art and intellectual pursuits. Why is that?
Because it can't be measured.
Really?
It cannot be measured by objective means. You always have the difference of human interpretation and nationalities. You remember how it is. So now take art, which is even much harder to define. And there's 1,000 different concepts about art. Just, you know, start a discussion about the concept of art, and you have 10 people in a room, you have 10 different opinions.
Yeah, but art that's successful though can touch those 10 people. In other words,
no, correct. But if those 10 people have to judge, 50 works of art, and say who is the winner, who gets the gold, and who gets, and that on a global scale, like the Olympics, this is a very, very difficult task. I don't say it can't be done. It's done by the art world,
Yeah, by the prices they pay, I suppose.
By that, you can say whoever makes the most money wins.
What is art?
It's a secretion, like a religion. I think that's the only main difference between an animal and a human being. And it is a bit useless, which is so important.
So it's useless but very important.
Very important. And it makes a difference. I think it's an impalpable difference between a concrete art, like to build a desk and so on, and to make an objet d'art. It can become an objet d'art. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but this piece of usual furniture might become, if there is something else, an object of art. And the difference is impalpable.
In other words, it's not palpable.
Palpable.
Liz, actually, how do you see yourself?
I see myself as a creative person that works in many different areas. So as a film director, I might direct a film crew and come up with an idea and a concept. And I pretty much use those skills also, though, as an artistic director. It's not that different. As a film director, you're thinking about something which is really a part of your artistic core, which is something you really want to say, to communicate to the world. As an artistic director, I feel that I have this responsibility to make sure I represent artists correctly and I'm respectful of their work. It's a bit more about putting an artistic vision within the context of a community. I was passionate about photography and I was passionate about filmmaking, and I chose filmmaking over photography because basically it gave me an opportunity to collaborate with people and to work with, in a way, all of the artistic disciplines sort of encased within one.
That's here in Melbourne?
Filmmaking, yeah, I went to film school here. The work that I personally connected to was work that had some sort of emotional engagement. So I wanted to see works that I felt excited by, that had a sense of wonder, that were intriguing, that surprised me, that had mystery, that offered more than just being, you know, a whole bunch of technology. In a project like House of Tomorrow, the works tend to be much more narrative than they do in a theme like Vanishing Point, which is more about illusions. So with the House of Tomorrow, I think there's a whole canon of history about futuristic homes, and you know, there was things like the Jetsons, there was Jacques Tardy's Mononcle. So when artists then come to engage with the theme now, they think about all those things that they've been brought up in their childhood and their background, and they engage with those ideas and then try and sort of, you know, contemporise them. Experimental was basically started by experimental filmmakers who were passionate about film and the limits of the medium. And for years it was run as an experimental film organisation with a film festival, with people submitting their films. I actually had my film screened here like years and years ago.
Really? Okay.
Oh yeah.
So I didn't realise it had such a history.
Oh, it has a huge history. And then in the 90s, the direction shifted because I suppose instead of it being looking at the sort of the limits and the boundaries of experimental film, it was like, well, new media was providing all these opportunities for new expression within the sort of moving image. And new media became much more relevant as what new forms of expression might look like. Technology has, I suppose, it's interrupted kind of more classic art forms and provided a way of, well, a whole bunch of new ways of expressing oneself. For me, it was really interesting to see what new media could do beyond a kind of a screen scenario. beginning of these sort of like cycles where new technology is introduced, often it's introduced in quite a clunky way. Like it isn't integrated into the storytelling very well until it sort of reaches a level of maturity where people really know how to understand how to utilise the medium, and therefore can propel their story to different areas which wasn't possible before. The process was thinking about what possibilities for artwork there might be with the idea of illusions. I suppose initially it was more like, it was called like illusions. And we were looking at, I suppose, the work of people like Tony Orser, Craig Walsh. And what I loved about those works is they take a very sort of familiar sort of setting and then find again something extraordinary within that. At each exhibition we think through, well, you know, what is the experience for the viewer going to be, and how will the experience change if I put one particular artwork next to another? We're inviting people to take a journey through a number of different artworks, which are a number of different experiences really. And, you know, I suppose that in a way we try and manage what the overall experience will be with each of those components of the program. Them to see all of the computers and all of the technology. We actually want the audience to focus on the experience of each work, and the way to do that is to hide the technology and to give you, basically use the exhibition design to create a real context for viewing the work.
That's all the gorillas there are left in the wild today. 380.
There's a certain amount of projects that exist when we think of the theme. So we basically try and contact those artists and try and get a commitment for those projects. Then we basically talk to a whole bunch of artists that might make work on the theme. We also commission some artists as well, so that we know what those projects are going to be pretty much, but you know, they might change along the way. And then there's some other projects which are kind of in the high risk area in terms of whether they're going to be ready, they're undeveloped, so you're not quite sure what's going to happen, but you know that artist works quickly, so you have to kind of give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's the level of people from life and people left on Earth. What if there are only 380 people left on Earth? What if
95% of the works we'll feel pretty certain about, but there's that 5% which we're taking a bit of a risk. And we're not 100% sure if it's going to work, but sometimes those projects, that 5%, can be the most fantastic projects. So you kind of have to take a leap of faith. What's fantastic about new media is that you have all of these people from very diverse backgrounds that basically create artworks, and they don't necessarily have to have this whole kind of lifetime experience behind an easel to create a particular work. Art history, I mean, a lot of the interesting work often comes where people are really, a couple of different disciplines collage. You know, that's where often there's this kind of grey area where you're not quite sure whether it's science or whether it's art or whether it's furniture design. We're basically choosing work that can be either viewed as contemporary art or new media, and it can sit quite comfortably in both of those areas.
But what's the difference?
To me, new media is you know, on the fringes of the new of contemporary arts. You know, within a whole bunch of other disciplines, that is the new of contemporary arts. New media is just one of those parts as well. I've been blown away by some of the artwork that people have come up with. I mean, for example, in Vanishing Point, I think that Alex Davies created an amazing magical artwork. In a way, he's sort of brought to life these potential ghosts that could be around you, or these sort of invisible people. He's sort of like given them the potion or the injection so that they can actually be brought to life. He's really thought about the theme of illusion and made something quite fantastic. An artist will come up with something that just speaks to people, that is just excites people, gets them thinking, gets them interested, surprises them, has that sort of, I suppose, X factor, you know. And that work will actually be, I suppose, their ticket to a whole bunch of exhibitions throughout the world. And then, you know, once it is in one place and is shown and people get excited, then other curators look at it and go, oh, I want that as well. And it'll sort of like just, you know, out of control kind of rolls and it just rolls on and they do really well out of it. And that can happen in a really short period of time. It can happen, you know, within a year, within 2 years. At any time, really amazing artwork that is produced and that is shown, people want to know about it. And it doesn't matter if it's new media or whether it's, you know, painting or ceramics or whatever. It's about the artwork being great. One of the things that I find most satisfying about putting on an exhibition is that you have all these people from different age groups that, you know, are getting a kick, experiencing a sense of delight, laughing out loud, and they're in an art exhibition, and I think that's fantastic.
You see yourself?
Media artist.
Or interactive art?
Yeah.
Interactive art? But how long have you been doing this?
Oh yeah.
Almost 7 years or 8 years.
Can you touch this from the other side?
When I was a student, actually at first I wanted to be an engineer, to make a robotics. Yeah.
Okay.
And but
this is where, in Tokyo?
Yeah, in Tokyo. Yeah, in Tokyo. Yeah.
So you're both from Tokyo?
Yes. And I also interested in the painting or art things.
Fine art.
Yeah,
yes.
fine art. Yes. In the university, something mixed.
This is at Tokyo University?
Yes. Yes.
But did you know each other at university?
Yes.
In my university, there is one famous media artist there. His name is Masaki Fujihata.
Mr. Fujihata, yes. Professor Fujihata, yes.
He is one of the pioneer of the media art in Japan. We help each other.
Yes. So
Slowly change the
because media artworks is very complicated. I mean, not only graphics, not only technique, not only construction. So everything mixed in an installation. So it is a little bit difficult to do only one person. At first, we are very interested in between real and not real, virtual things. So new media is very just fit the category. Yeah, for me, I'm very interested in to provide the new experience. Actually, we are not so interested in to show only image or to show the imagination.
We would like to share the experience, our experience, and also audience experience. So it's,
so you want them to be involved in what you're doing.
Yeah.
What was the story behind this piece?
It's a three-dimensional picture. Like in the behind, we think about the very short story.
Yes.
So in the midnight, light from the moon come to the table.
Yes.
Then the tools appear their own real characters. If we do this image just only the film. Yeah, okay, we can show this just like the story, just image. It's not with experience for the audience.
Yes, so the audience doesn't get anything back.
Yes.
And how did you work together?
Our background is very close. So sometimes I make the image and sometimes I make electronics, but also she do both.
At first we discussed ideas and then choose the tools.
Tools. Yeah.
The materiality is the forks, the knives.
Yeah.
These are obviously switches, so
Yes,
you touch them.
yes, that's right. So important things is projector's position. It's very important.
So once that is the reference, then you can put the knife and the fork.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And also the image can each image can move with the computer. So after that we can adjust. Every time we show the piece, something changes.
You're learning something else?
Yes.
Because from the audience reaction.
Yeah. And actually we have a 4 or 5 versions of the table.
At what point is this technology? And what is the point where it becomes art?
We don't want to show just the technology.
Yeah.
We would like to show something to recognize young children and also old people.
For us in Japan, the technology is not so special. Just when I was a child, we played computer game also everywhere in our life we can find a very small technology.
So technology is everywhere.
For us, we are not so separate the media art and the traditional art. Not so separate for us or young generation. Yeah.
Yeah, but how old are you? You must be what, 60, 70 years old?
We have our own company. So the one part is make art piece and to show like this installation, not for sale. Yeah. I also teach in the university.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you teach new media as well?
Yeah.
What are the other things you've done?
It's footprint.
Footprint?
Yeah, footprint work.
When you say footprint, what do you mean?
There is a 3 meter by 4 meters place. Yes. And then when people across the space, the animal footprint follow the people.
Actually, we are a little bit interested in the negative of the existence, like shadow or footprints.
Yes. Negative.
And also we are interested in the children's play or toys. You know, we inspired the work from the shadow puppet when we played with a child.
Okay.
And also we played the footprint is hide and seek like this.
Why do you do this? Why do we need this?
Maybe it's very important experience for us. Maybe
What, that you were followed by an animal?
Yeah. No. The plane. At first, the shadow things not so like this, just showing moving shadow at first, very fast.
So the first one was the elephant.
Yeah. It just show the concept between real and virtual. But then when we show installation, some audience just play with their own shadow with virtual shadow. Okay, something.
So this evolves like that.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on this project? How many years?
From 2001.
So every time it's been evolving?
A little bit change.
What's the next?
Now we're thinking about the special table for the smelling.
Yeah, now we're researching for the smelling sensor.
Oh, so you touch and smell?
Yeah.
Which countries have you done this exhibition?
Oh yeah.
In Austria, and also now we show the same time in France, in Paris, England.
What's been the reaction so far? Very positive?
Yeah.
Almost, yeah.
Almost, yes.
But
sometimes it's a little bit different.
The Australian people is very gentle, I think. In France,
it's very rough.
Rough and strong.
They weren't just touching.
No, they just.
So they broke it?
Yeah. Every week something is broken.
Sometimes people don't touch, just
look.
Just look.
And they don't know what it is.
This is like a contemporary art.
Yeah, like a sculpture. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Like that.
And what did you tell them afterwards?
Just I touch.
Yeah.
Everything.
Then
people challenge them to touch.
Yeah. We have two steps for every work. So first step is just fun, just like children, like just touch or just fun. Then some people try to think about something. Or for example, in this piece, so what is existence or what is shadow means or like this. But at first we want to just fun. Then something thinking.
That other case came up too. The actual artifacts, they're Western. Mm-hmm. Why didn't you use Japanese artifacts?
You know, our normal life is not so traditional Japanese.
I realize that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
And also, if we use the normal things like Western tools, everybody understands something. Japanese feeling or Japanese something.
But if we choose the chopstick, it has meaning something. Japanese culture or Japanese something it has meaning. But we don't want to get the meaning for each tool.
So you don't want it to be, you want it to be culturally international.
Yes.
It's very interesting because before that, just looking, before that people, the face is very serious. It's like more, how do you say, like a snob.
Yes.
We can understand everything like that. But after that,
they recognize
how
they can
to
touch.
work.
Yeah.
People change the face like a child.
Yeah.
It's very interesting for us.
But that's what art does.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I think that's when you know it's magic.
Agatha, my child, come. There is someone I'm anxious for you to meet.
Essentially, I see myself as a choreographer. That's what I do. In addition to that, I do direct, accompany, chunky move.
From the shadows, a small, leering man in a kilt stepped forward. He held out a hand which resembled a limp shred of cloth. This is my daughter, Agatha. Agatha, I am pleased to introduce you to the Right Honourable Dougal Simpkin, heir to the Laird of Crotchet. Simpkin took Agatha's fingers in his cold and slimy hands. What a delight you are, dear Agatha. Sir Colin has told me all about you.
I started off going out and dancing as a teenager, and for me it was actually my mother who, when I was in high school, encouraged me to think about maybe going and doing some dance classes.
So, Mr. Simpkin, are you enjoying the ball? Not half as much as I'm enjoying these precious few moments with you in my sight, Agatha. What delicate skin you possess. And please, call me Dougal.
I didn't advertise it very loudly at first for a few months.
But I can imagine, particularly for rapping, and kick the shit out of you at school.
I know. So, but after a while, when I started to enjoy it and I felt a bit more on top of it, you know, I wouldn't advertise it, but I wouldn't deny it either.
His breath brought chills to her throat, and his little eyes shone like a boy anticipating chocolate. Dear Agatha, would you do me the honour of this dance? He wheedled.
This teacher that I had was also a reviewer of dance for a newspaper and invited me to some performances of the Australian Ballet and other dance performances of the Victorian College of the Arts. And these were things I had never seen before, virtually never heard of before. And then the teacher I had also encouraged me to do some ballet classes to improve my strength, even though my interest was not necessarily doing ballet. And that became a whole new excruciating and humiliating process of starting this thing at the age of, I think by that time, over 16.
You must excuse me, Mr. Simpkin. I'm not feeling well. The words blurted from Agatha's mouth as she felt tears and a tight throat of anxiety surge up from her tremulous breast.
I was doing my HSC and I was encouraged to audition for the Australian Ballet School, and I did audition and I got in, and that's when my father became very, well, he wasn't very supportive about the whole idea at all.
She had barely taken a few steps when a firm hand gripped her wrist. It was her father. What is wrong, Agatha? I trust you are not brusque with Dougal. No, father. A fever is upon me, I fear.
I mean, my dad grew up in a fairly tough, very physical world where it really was about that. It was really about making money to make a living, to be able to buy a house, to take care of your family. And he provided a life for me where I had time to think, things to read, contemplation, and those. And so when I expressed my desires, I think for him it was very difficult initially to be able to deal with.
The captain and Clarabelle were nowhere to be seen. Agatha looked everywhere. I'm not going mad. I'm not, she whispered to herself as she began opening doors. Doors to airing closets, doors to servant rooms, doors...
Rather than being encouraging, my father would turn to me at my lowest moments and go, "You don't, if you want to leave, it's okay." And I would have to then go, "No," and rally, against him, and therefore rally against my low kind of feelings.
Within there were strange shapes, a glimpse of fine golden ringlets glinting in the candlelight, of crimson fabric, of skin glistening, and more.
I remember one time my father picking me up from dance class, and I still had sort of my dance training gear on, and we had to go somewhere. There's some function, it was some Jewish function of some sort where a whole lot of his friends were, and I kind of non-thinking would kind of park the car and we're at some hall somewhere, and I kind of got out of the car and slammed the door and he said, "You're not going to the building wearing that kind of gear." And not have me be seen among his mates in my dance outfit.
The skies opened and down poured rain. So heavy, it pushed her onto the sodden earth. In the storm, she could see nothing, feel nothing.
When you're a dancer, when are you lost in the music, as I would say a musician is?
There's two. You can talk about it in two different environments. There's the performer and there's the going out, let's say, to a rave party where you reach these moments after a number of hours of dancing. You do you get yourself through this physical activity, get yourself into some kind of almost trance state where you physicalise the music, and the music is kind of almost inside and going through your body. And
so it's almost like a molecular reaction to
yes, It is, and when you finish, you know, in the last few years I've been doing a fair bit of yoga because I've been getting a bit older and it's been getting a bit harder, and I do it in the morning. And sometimes after yoga class I can actually get a very similar feeling to when I was younger and I'd finish dancing at a dance party.
Like a euphoria.
It's kind of a euphoria, but also very deeply relaxed. Professional dance is a different thing. There's a relationship to an audience. There's a consciousness that what you're doing is it's not really about your own body and experiences of transcending from this reality into another state. It's a really conscious act of sort of transformation to show.
Communication, is that the word?
Yeah.
Like being a metaphor for a story, or
being a cipher in some ways about music and movement. The pleasure for me in that is when you completely leave your own reality, your own sense of self. You actually leave your own kind of world and baggage and everything, and you don't exist in your normal form at that time. And it doesn't happen in every performance, it doesn't happen in every show, but it doesn't happen all the time. But those moments where it happens, and that merging happens with these other forms, or with music and light and so forth, and it's very addictive too. I think a lot of performers need that. They find that with playing music, or they find that with dancing. Maybe actors find that with playing a role, playing a part that they leave themselves in. And of course, an actor, musician, or dancer, it's always you. It's not like you do leave yourself, but maybe you leave parts of yourself, and certain parts of yourself kind of open up and flourish. Choreographer-dancer relationship is a very strong and codependent relationship to create anything. I have these ideas that are quite specific and they're exact, and I say, okay, and I get a dancer and I say, could you please do this? It doesn't work like that. I work with dancers who are far more skilled and able than me. I really have to know that person, and if I don't, it's a process of finding and getting to know that person is through
it
this
to know
rehearsal.
know their what or their skill set, or what do you mean?
It's actually to know a number of things. It's actually to know them kind of through their body in a way, of how there's a kind of a personality through the way they move, and getting to know that. And it's also getting to know the person themselves. A good relationship with a dancer is where they take your initial ideas and are able to much further extend them than you ever could, and then to kind of temper them and shape them in a way. When they can relate to it, intrinsically relate to it, about something about themselves, then it becomes quite powerful in their dance. If it always remains a foreign concept, they can deliver it beautifully and do it well, but that's when it never really works.
You're supposed to take it!
I tend to start off with the idea of the work first. That's my beginning point, and that often can be a very broad theme or an idea, or it can be like a smudge of an idea or a taste of an idea, and I bounce that around in my head that can be for a long period, 1, 2, 3 years.
Oh,
and
really?
but I have a few of them, so it's not like I will do nothing for 2 or 3 years. Some of them just gather more and more, and actually are big enough to then begin to, okay, I can begin a development period for a work. And when I talk about development period, I engage a number of dancers for a month full time, and I work with them. And
this is your composing part.
That's right. And I work with designers, with composers, with even dramaturgs, sometimes friends who are theatre directors to come in regularly. And that month will be a very intensive month of throwing around ideas and trying to be kind of brave to throw in, ideas that might be foreign to me, or a concept that is oblique to what I'm doing but it's somehow related. And from that, not me, but I'm the one who puts it together. Yeah. We propose a whole lot of things that I document quite rigorously.
Yeah, but when you say document, this is the other
Camera.
thing. There's no notation for dancing, like a score?
There is notation for dancing, but the Benesh notation, which is the most common notation which is used for ballet,
yes.
Because ballet is the vocabulary of a codified language, it is possible to notate, and it's still even with ballet it's difficult to notate. But once you get into the realm of idiosyncratic kind of frenetic, frenzied movements, we videotape it in different forms. We videotape it primarily as it would be danced or performed, and then we do these documentation taping where it's done at half the speed. Other times it's done with dancers talking about whether the in-breath is going out or going in, so they go in, breath, out, and everything is... So when I say rigorously documented, it's documented in layers that you, through a number of tapes, you can bring back something exact.
Where's the box? Give me the box!
Of all these ideas, only maybe 10-15% of it actually really works, or I can see a way of taking that on to the next stage, which is the kind of the final stage of making a work.
Is the storyboarding like a movie, or?
Well, I start with concepts and ideas that do not exist in dance whatsoever, like nothing. And then and it's not sort of, the idea is for me is not to sort of have this primary source and then dance becoming this secondary language.
Skill, right.
So, that's not the kind of dance that interests me. There is a communication or an existence or a language in dance that words cannot communicate. This is a sort of sub-communication that we can relate to and sort of understand. Not rationally understand, but sort of intuitively understand or emotionally understand. And it's in this area that interests me in making works. There isn't any kind of big heroes in dance. I kind of like that too.
Really?
Yeah, I'm kind of more into the... I also quite like the whole electronic and techno music side of music where those people are really faceless.
The geek factor.
Yeah, kind of, and I strongly... I feel very comfortable about that. I quite like that. Where it's really the works that sort of stand out.
Art in general is something that gives the possibility to a man to be near to God, in a sense that you are able to create. Of course, you don't...
Why does man want to be like God?
Because he wants to be immortal, he wants to be powerful. I think he wants to just forget about the normal things in life. I think this is something necessary, no? It's like dreams.